Hi everyone, welcome to Edison Bob. Today I want to talk about how to get a slot in Polkadot and Kusama. So this will be an advanced video that is intended for teams and people who need to secure a Parachain slot and want to find out all the parameters that they need and all the extrinsics that they need to set this up. So how to get a slot, what are the extrinsics that you need, and how can you determine the parameters like lease periods and so on. It is an advanced video, so it assumes you have consumed all the information that is available to you. To start it off, there is the Polkadot and Kusama wiki, and it has two sections that are relevant for you: Parachain slot auctions and Parachain crowd loans. So I assume that you know all of that. To start it off, there are two layers. There is the slot auction. This will always be there. And optionally, you can have a crowd loan. So a crowd loan is always sitting on top of the slot auction. So we're going to run this through in the order of what you have to do to secure your slot. So there are two steps needed to prepare your Parachain or your Parathread. The first one is to get a para ID. And you will do this by calling registrar reserve. And then with registrar register, you will upload or register the runtime. The first version of the runtime that will then be executed as a parachain or a parathread. Okay, so let's look at this on Polkadot.js. So we are going to registrar reserve. This doesn't take any parameters. It requires that you lock up collateral. So on Kusama it's 40 KSM, and on DOT it should be sort of a similar value, so a few hundred or maybe 1,000 DOT. I'm sure you can look it up here. So registrar reserve will give you this para ID, and then when you have the para ID, you can execute all the other calls. So registrar register, for example, takes the para ID, takes the Genesis head, and takes the validation code. So this puts the parathread in a state where it's registered on Polkadot and Kusama and is ready to start execution once it has a slot. Good. Now, how do we get a slot? So to get a slot, we will do one of two things. Either you're self-bidding in an auction, or you're creating a crowd loan that will bid for you in the auction. In both cases, you will need to participate in the auction. And so you need to read everything about this here on the Polkadot wiki. And there is a very useful tool here for the auction schedule, because this is sort of the hard thing of determining what lease periods do I need, when do I need to start bidding, and so on and so on. So to do this, you can find out all the information by yourself, but it's also important to reach out to and read up on the current governance boards and look up what are the recent governance discussions to see what is the current auction schedule. So these are the scheduled auctions. So I assume this is on-chain scheduled because this is the only trustworthy information. And so this lets you select a certain auction, and then you will see what information is available there. So when does the auction start, at which block, at what time, and so on. And so from this you can determine the most relevant information, but not all of it. So let's look at what information you need to provide to the extrinsics. And we're going to start with auctions.bid. So if you're self-funding, you will need the para ID. You will need the auction index. For which auction are you bidding? And then what is the first slot you're bidding for and the last slot? And what this means is the lease period that you're bidding for. Okay, so what lease period do I need to bid for? You will learn it in a minute. And what amount are you bidding? And you can compare this with the other extrinsic that you can use alternatively, which is crowd loan create, which does not let you self-bid, but rather create a crowd loan. And so we're going to look at that. Crowd loan create, very similar. Index, which is the para ID. The cap, what is the maximum amount of tokens that you're accepting in the crowd loan for the bid. First period, last period, same as before. And end, when does the crowd loan end? So at what time will the crowd loan be released? Just let me mute this. Okay. So both of these extrinsics are very similar, auction.bid and crowdloan.create. And what they will do is they will allow you to participate in the auction. Now, the question you need to answer is, for which lease periods am I bidding? First thing you can do is look at the overview, and the overview is, so this is Network Parachain's overview. This will let you know the current lease period and for how long the current lease period will still be running. So the earliest slot you would want to acquire is for the current lease period or for the next lease period likely. But you can look at what the current auction is offering. Sometimes there is auction, not always. And it will show you what is the first lease period that is currently being auctioned off and what is the last lease period that is currently auctioned off. So these are the lease periods that are up for auction at the moment. So you see that in the overview, you see the current lease period is 26. Up for the auction is 27 to 34, which is 8 lease periods. And you can decide to bid for any of the lease periods that are up for auction. But it's not as simple as what is the current value that is being contributed, but this goes into a calculation. So since you don't have to bid for all the lease periods, the value calculation gets one step more complex. So basically you can take what is the bid for the current auction. So for example, here you see 3000 KSM, 305 KSM being bid and so on. And this is being then multiplied by the number of lease periods. And this is then called the locked value. So if you're bidding with, let's say with 100 tokens for 2 lease periods, then the locked value is 200. If you're bidding with 100 tokens for 4 lease periods, the locked value is 400. Which means if one chain is bidding for 8 lease periods and one chain is bidding for 4 lease periods, the chain with the 8 lease periods has double the locked value. Or in other words, the chain bidding for the lower amount of lease periods needs to bid double as much to win the auction. It's super important to keep in mind. Okay, so you can figure out the lease periods here by looking at this. What you can also do is look at parachains.info/auctions. This is a super useful website that allows you to look at past slot auctions. So this, for example, helps you determine what is the current prices that slots are going for, in this case 80,000 DOT or 20,000 DOT. You can also switch to Kusama, see how slots are going there, and you can observe previous auctions. So this lets you do a little bit of a field study and find out what is the current environment that you're dealing with when you have to design your crowd loan, for example, or determine how much you're going to bid. Good. So this gives you the number of auctions you can bid for. So you can know what is the first lease period, what is the last lease period. One important detail to look at also is that, let's say you want to renew your slot. If you want to renew your slot, let's say Karura here, they are running until lease period 27. So the next slot they will need is 28. Now you see that the auction is starting at 27, so do they have to wait? No, they don't have to wait. What they could do is only start bidding for 28 until 34 in this case. Just in this case, they would need to have that little bit more of a bid to make sure that the total value of the bid is competitive. So this is important. And if you're starting a crowd loan, what is also important to know here is you don't have to start the crowd loan on the time of the auction. The crowd loan can actually start ahead of the auction. The crowd loan is parameterized with the information of what lease periods it is bidding for. And so when all of those lease periods are available in an auction, the crowd loan will start bidding for you. And so this allows you to configure it in a way that you started ahead of time if you're already accumulating tokens in your crowd loan, and then when the conditions are right, it will start bidding. I think this is all I have on my mind for this. Thank you for watching. I wish you all the best for your crowd loan, and goodbye.